Hi.
Hi.
Friday to Monday.
He Sponge.
I ain't saying
Okay.
that. Tell him he
Today
has to put a little more.
in his dash.
There you go.
Move your hairy leg. Okay. Hi, people. Today we're going to act to animated stories on a YouTube. Okay? And they're supposed to be real stories, but they're not real stories. And they're fake and they're dumb and they're just. Oh, here we go.
Maybe Crash will say something
This
before
time.
before the end of it.
Because he says it all with his eyes. Like this. He Morse code with his eyelashes. Like this.
Yeah, I talk with facial expressions. I think that's my issue.
Okay, say hi with your face. Say bye with your face.
I can't say bye with my face. I react with facial expressions. Like, I don't really say shit. That's what I mean. I can't. I don't really know. Like, I can't control my face, so I don't really know how to.
Stop it.
No, I don't really know how to.
Ruin
Obviously, she thinks so that's
That's because she loves your face.
it's because I speak with my face.
Because she loves your face. Here we go, people. I'll get you ready, all right?
Ready?
My high school bully has a crush on me.
All right, let's do this.
Crush on me.
Hosted by Animated Stories.
I read.
I know. I told you it hurt.
My name is Daryl. I got my dream job after college and worked my way up to become the chief editor at Vogue magazine. My life now is luxurious and exciting, filled with constant partying and mingling with top celebrities. But let me be clear, it was and even though I was here, it was very obvious I wasn't like the other kids. On
Okay,
top of
so
that,
what's wrong with you?
struggling with my own issues outside of my skin color. I knew I was gay, but I hadn't actually come out yet. This, of course, made me the main victim of the school bully. Sid. He would embarrass me and harass me in front of everyone. It got so bad that I even had to take a month off from school to recover from the trauma. But you won't believe that 10 years later, my school bully asked me out on a date. And you'll have an even harder time believing what I told him. Pick me, Daryl, at 15 years old. I was a bit on the skinny side, shy, and spent a lot of time reading in the library by myself. It was the first day of sophomore year, and I didn't know what to expect. When I got to math class, there were no seats left except next to Sid. Crap. He looked mean, too. He had a shaved head, braces, and thick arched eyebrows that made him look angry all the time.
Him,
And when I sat down, he laughed at me and said, Daryl is such a fruitcake. He kisses guys. And he got the whole class laughing. And everyone started chanting, fruitcake. I ran out of the room crying. The next day, I arrived at class again, determined not to let. We were halfway through the class when the teacher called on Sid to answer a question on the board. He stuttered. His face flushed red, and for one split second, I felt bad. So I whispered the answer to him. I thought we had made a connection, but boy, was I wrong. After school, I saw him and his friends waiting for me by the trash cans. I tried to avoid eye contact,
What
but
is it
Sid
like
ran up to
bobbleheads?
me and started taunting me. He then looked at me and said, What? You think I'm dumb? I don't need your help in class, you faggot. His friends laughed and they grabbed my backpack. All my books, homework, and money spilled out. Sid took the money and put it in his pocket. And the rest of his friends crumpled up all my papers and threw them at my face. Begged them to stop. But they just kept laughing, and the more I cried, the harder they laughed. I started to run, but Sid grabbed my neck and slammed me down on the concrete. Choked me so hard, I ended up passing out. Luckily, my neighbor was
Choked you to
passing
sleep?
by, but they ran off before he could catch them. That injury actually gave me a concussion. And for the next month, I was pulled out of school to recover. My speech was slurred, and I I would get painful headaches
He
every
fucked you
day.
up.
It took weeks of recovery to finally get back to normal.
Met that girl last night,
After
huh?
that, I decided to make some big changes to my life. I started to exercise regularly,
Look
which
where
helped
you
spark
read it.
my growth spurt and helped me gain muscle. Most importantly, I studied harder than I ever did before and got into a top college out of state. I landed my dream job, finally came out to my parents, and for the first time ever, I felt comfortable in my own skin. 10 years have passed since that day, and I had forgotten all about that jerk Sid. Until
like the
one
self-imposed one.
unsuspecting
Mhm.
day, when I saw his name typed out neatly on a sheet on top of a stack of resumes. My stomach was tied up in knots. And suddenly, all those terrible memories came flooding back. Sid came in the next morning for an interview. He was
Punch him.
applying for a mailroom position in my department. He looked the same. Crooked teeth despite his braces, scar across his right arm, a shaved head, and of course, those mean eyebrows.
You look like a
Something
racist.
did seem different about him,
Right,
but
right.
I couldn't put my finger on it.
A
It was
bigot.
hard to pay attention to what he was saying to me. I was remembering those sad nights when I cried uncontrollably. And my mom comforted me by telling me, "You'll be okay. One day, everything will be okay. Don't worry." I snapped back to reality, and Sid looked at me and said, "Hey, even if I don't get the job, can I maybe take you out for a drink?" I was in absolute shock. He must not have remembered me at all. And, oh, yeah, he was gay. This was an absolute shock to me. I mean, I could understand why he wouldn't recognize me. I looked different, and I used a different name at work. But the thing I couldn't believe was that Sid was gay. Maybe that's why he made fun of me so much. Did he see a part of himself that he hated in me? For some reason, I said, yes. I had no interest in him, but I was curious. I wanted to know whether he really did not remember how he tormented me throughout high school. And if he did remember, how did he have the nerve to ask me out? I met him at a bar. He was full of compliments. We made conversation about school, his hobbies, and his family. He did not mention anything about high school. I decided not to bring up that topic. Anyway, I thought to myself, it was going to be the last time I saw him. I was happy with my new life now, and all that pain was in the past.
That's what he
The
did
next
to
day,
the-
my phone was abuzz with his flirty messages. I did not reply, and another message came after a few hours. "You know, I had a lot of fun last night. I really hope I can see you again." Suddenly, I felt the bitterness of my high school days rush over me. I grew angry and felt the need for revenge. And so, I started plotting. He asked to meet at a hip cafe downtown. I decided that I was going to confront him about that day he left me there passed out on the sidewalk. How he was a useless loser, and to top it
Interview him
off,
off the heel.
tell him he would never get the job. Then I would storm out, leaving him there humiliated in public. I had it all planned out. We made some small talk, but
He's gonna
unexpectedly,
apologize.
he started talking about his parents. He told me about his stepfather growing up.
Oh,
His
boy,
stepfather was mean and abusive, often lashing out at him. And when he came out as gay, his dad struck him so hard, he had a permanent scar across his arm. He felt ashamed and decided to keep it a secret. His mother wasn't really present while this was happening, so when he was at school, he took out all his anger and rage. He then admitted something that changed my whole revenge plan. He started tearing up, and soon he was full-on sobbing in the cafe. He told me he felt so guilty for taking out his anger on his classmates in high school and for being a terrible bully. He changed the choices he made when he was a teenager, but he had to live with his poor choices forever. The person he bullied was me. I was one of the victims of his misguided shame and hate, but I no longer wanted revenge. There's no point in making him feel further guilt and shame. I just kept quiet, listened, and tried to empathize. I no longer felt anger and hatred toward him, but instead just felt pity. Bullying is a vicious cycle. It's easy to be hateful towards someone when someone has been hateful towards you. But I wanted to choose a different path. Here was my bully, sobbing, breaking down. His whole life, he was beaten and shamed into hating who he was. And he took that out of me. I felt pity for him. He was still struggling to feel comfortable in his own skin, while I grew from it. I loved who I was and what I've accomplished. Sid was just a small kid, trapped inside his own pain and fear. I am strong, stronger than the sum of all the bullying that threatened to engulf my very existence. There will always be
Wow.
bullies, and many of them are victims of bullying
We just told him?
themselves. But I hope that with more love and
I'm gonna beat the
kindness,
shit out of him.
somewhere in the cycle, the bullying will stop.
Well, go to the next one, please.
We just told him?
If he liked me, maybe later. But I would have been on a date
But
with him.
eventually you would have told him.
How I hide from my parents that I'm a lesbian.
Did you
Hey guys,
did
my
you want to
name's
get our
Zane,
money?
and I think that nature is truly taking revenge on my parents for something.
Okay,
Because
what
they
did you
have a
do?
maximum level of intolerance in blood, and they also have 100% homosexual kids. Our family
Wait,
was
what?
like a standard royal one. Mom and dad, kids, me and my brother,
We should put the
2 years older than me.
Get over juice?
We got along very well and were good friends in childhood, and when we got older, I would even say more. Max was the only truly close person to me,
Wait.
which is why this long story hit my inner world so hard.
Oh, handed the book.
My parents raised my brother and me in severity, with a pinch of religion. Though honestly, they could hardly be called truly religious people.
What's it?
Rather, for them, religion was something that could explain their own views, especially homo and xenophobia towards others. Like all the neighbors in our small town, we went to church on Sundays and listened to sermons about love and forgiveness. And then our parents, with other parishioners, unanimously blamed a couple of new young people who bought a house in the area because they weren't brothers, they were partners. And yes, our pastor never told his parishioners that everyone is equal, but some are more equal. On the contrary, he insisted on tolerance. In my opinion, things that the parents did were a complete hypocrisy, because either you believe or you don't need to behave yourself like right adults. For me personally, faith doesn't end in skin color or sexual identity. It's something that should be in the heart, in the soul if you want. Anyway, it was fun and illogical. It was like, this is such a special logic. Love your closest one and hate everything that's different. Well, yes, everyone has their own views on what they love and what they hate. It's much worse when they try to convey the same position to us. It just turned out that my brother and I were very different people. At 15, Max started to behave strangely. He refused to date girls, although he was handsome, and even high school girls would hang on him, a lot of them. He said that he wasn't interested and didn't need it. Then the parents didn't do anything. On the contrary, they praised him for thinking about studying and not threatening neighboring young with sudden teenage pregnancies. And then Dad began to somehow suspiciously look at him because of the fact that Max was sitting in the bathroom for too long, doing fashionable haircuts, and, oh my God, taking care of himself. Well, probably the manicure and face toner were really a little too much. I don't know. In our small town, where the men were divided into farmers, metal workers, and truck drivers, yeah, that's for sure they were too much. But at first, the parents attributed everything to his young age. Although Max wasn't really hiding, he simply didn't shout into the eyes of everyone that he was gay. He just talked with guys and flirted with them in crowded places. So it was easy to understand, at least for interested people. For example, I understood that he was gay in a very short period of time, although we didn't talk about this. Like, he understood about me a few years later, but about that later. The only thing I asked him was to be more careful, because in our town, there have been cases of a very cruel homophobia.
Look, this
But I'd never
Sid.
thought of my own
With the other
parents.
They look like they're
But
gonna
I'd
get
better.
shot.
At 18, Max got a regular boyfriend with whom he started living. He told everyone they were friends. His parents were also homophobes, and no one wanted problems. But yep, the closest
You
people
don't
knew
want no
about it.
problems, big
Who
fella.
didn't know, they guessed. Our parents had no idea about that. Over the
they
weekend,
all
Dad
bald.
continued to ask him about girls and kids. Mother pressed that the neighbors were thinking the wrong thing. And studying was good, but he had to think about his personal life. I laughed in the corner, because once I saw how he thought about his personal life in the company of his boyfriend, it was a thunderbolt in camp. I honestly don't know. I personally didn't see how everything happened. Therefore, all I can say, I will repeat from the words of my brother. Max and his boyfriend were kissing on the porch after going to a movie, and then Dad came to their apartment. What for? Why didn't they go into the apartment? I have no answers.
Yeah, why not?
So let it be they wanted to do so. Dad saw everything, got mad, hit Max in the face with his right hand, and
Warning,
then threw
scene
him
of
in the car and
violence.
brought him home for a serious talk. It was a real
He's
hell.
hitting with his right hand.
At first,
What if
they
he
were
would've
just
done
arguing,
here, hit him with his
although
left?
their screams shook the walls of the entire house. And then they came to real threats of
So the
life
left
and
hand is
death.
gay.
By that time, I'd already become involved in the process, because my parents were literally ready to tear Max apart, because he turned out not to be the person they wanted. He was almost accused of betraying his homeland. Mother rushed at him with attempts to beat him, but when my father went to the garage to get a gun, I couldn't stand it anymore. I tried to save Max, and held my mom while my brother jumped out the window and ran down the street away from our house. Naturally, they yelled at me, but I paid with my nerve
The nigga
cells.
jumped in the window.
I was able to convince my parents that they still couldn't do anything if they didn't want victims or to be behind bars. Parents didn't get the idea, but they didn't continue the persecution. They
Leave
simply
this
deleted him
lies.
from their lives and said that they officially didn't have a son. But this censorship is nobody for them, and they didn't want to know him. For Max, this was the best decision, because he and his boyfriend were finally able to move to a larger city and live in peace together. In the end, Max said that he would always be happy to shelter me if I suddenly needed it, and winked. And then I walked the streets for a long time and was afraid to go home. If my parents had such a bad reaction to him, what would happen to me? Because by that time, I'd already understood that I was a lesbian. This is such a
What?
combo. But they say that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. In fact, Max chose the most unfortunate moment for his coming out. Because after his epic departure, my parents immediately switched their attention to my humble person. And they immediately started to try to marry me off, despite the fact that I was only 16. I'm not in a serious relationship yet. I wasn't even sure which type of girls I liked. But my parents had a bad experience and decided not to wait until I was mature enough to make my own choice. They brought me some guys, children of parents' friends. And you know, these were never those who are called the son of my mother's friend. On the contrary, because there was only one somewhat normal guy, and I became good friends with him. And the rest were awful. Thankfully, they didn't pick their teeth with a fork and didn't blow their nose on the tablecloth. Surprisingly, no.
What
Such a
type of niggas
variety
you know?
of peasant men only averted me from the stronger sex. I finally understood that I liked girls more, but I couldn't tell them about this, of course. First, I didn't feel like running away from home at the time of the battle,
I
as was the
know.
case
That's
with
why
Max.
I'm glad that my
And
enemy don't.
second, I was just
Got more
sorry
skills.
for my parents,
Got
who
more
really
skills than
suffered from my
this
brother's
is just
escape.
horrible.
Well, to begin with, I decided to play along with them. To do this, David came to me, that very one guy, to marry. We talked and found out what we wanted from each other was the same thing. He already had a girl, only an adult one with a kid, which his mother would never accept. So we decided to play love until something changed. So, David and I became an official couple for everyone, especially for parents, and we were really good friends. I met his girlfriend. He periodically dragged me to the student parties, so I could find my love, and everything was just perfect for 3 years. Parents dreamed about our wedding. Mom looked for lovely houses in a new area in advance, so that we wouldn't live too far, and Mom could watch our hypothetical kids.
This is
David
footage of
performed
the
his role
scene for the
perfectly.
message.
I would have believed it myself if I hadn't known what was really happening. But our fictitious happiness couldn't last too long.
Slid it from the tub.
Then he graduated and left the city, took his girlfriend and her kid with him, and I stayed with my parents. At first, they accused me, then accused him, and then they began to look for new candidates for me. This time, one nice. Only trash that needed no one, because cool guys already have fine relationships by 19. Of course, I wasn't going to put up with such a situation, but I was still without a permanent relationship for which I should fight. You know, if you have something that is worth fighting for, it's easier to bear all the burdens of your situation. And so I just went to where I had to. The main thing in the process was not to fall for the parental conspiracy and not to be under the crown with another creepy guy that slipped to me. And then I met her, and I realized that here it is, my chance to repeat other people's exploits, because my motivation was finally found. And the most important thing, Alice wasn't at all against our relationship. I would say she was more for it than I was, and she even convinced me that we should be together. You understand, I simply couldn't resist such a pressure. I decided to be honest to the end, and I told my parents. I said that they have a choice, either to accept me and Max as we are, or lose both kids.
Maxine.
Of course, they screamed, but Mom promised to think. Since then, another 2 years have passed. Max and I live close to each other with our partners, and everything is wonderful. And recently, my mom called me and asked me to talk. She and Dad thought about it, well, and made the right choice. They chose us instead of their stupid stereotypes. Write in the comments if you've ever had the same coming out experience.
But he's about to kill her brother.
Matt, yeah.
He was going to get.
You want to get his gun? I jumped out that window too.
This one is called I Found Out My Son's Gay and My Daughter's Lesbian.
Yeah, and when I was
For
looking
as
at the
far back
trans,
as I can remember.
they're trans. The girl is her and her brother are trans. So you still end up with a boy and a girl.
Mm-hmm. You just
For as far
make the wrong person. That's all.
For as far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to have kids. Of course, I wanted to get married and fall in love and all that other good stuff. But really, I wanted to be a mom. I wanted the baking cookies, doing crafts, running all over town to soccer games and all the activities. I wanted it all. I had dreamed of having that perfect family and perfect Facebook-worthy life. I wanted the white picket fence, the minivan, the whole 9 yards. When I met my husband, I knew he was the one. People always say that. You know when you know. And we both knew it. I was working in a photo lab while I was in university, and he came in regularly. I started to notice he was coming in more and more, and that the pictures he was wanting developed or blown up were getting more and more mundane, and were looking more and more like just fake excuses to come in and see me.
Oh, you
One day I called him on it, asking him why he took so many pictures of the same things, and kept paying to have them developed. He said, I think you know why.
I'm not sure how I feel about it.
That night we went to a movie and out for dinner afterwards.
So I don't happen to.
We couldn't stop talking or laughing. There wasn't a single awkward, silent moment. There were times of silence, but it felt comfortable. And neither of us felt the need to fill every single moment with pointless babble, like what happened on most first dates. We dated for 3 months before I took him home to meet my parents. They thought I had struck gold. Darren was super tall, very kind, the easiest person in the world to talk to, and he was a chef. That's how he really won me over. They say the way to a man's heart is through the stomach, but I beg to differ. I think that saying should be changed to, the way to anyone's heart is through their stomach. I definitely like to eat as much as any man. Darren had trained in Italy and specialized in Italian cooking. I I was a little worried about my weight with all the pasta and fancy cooking, but I was willing to make that sacrifice. I did have to say to him from time to time, "Do you think you could try some low-fat meals?" He was a typical chef who cooked for taste, not for health. His soups were amazing, but you were basically drinking cream. He looked disgusted when I suggested he use milk instead of cream. The look on his face when I said that was beyond hilarious. You'd think I had asked him for a kidney or something. Anyway, I definitely put on a few pounds during that first year of dating. But we were happy, so happy, that it didn't seem to matter anymore. After 18 months of dating, he proposed, and he did it in the most amazing way. I had slept over at his house, and he told me he was going to make me a big breakfast in bed. I was shocked to wake up to him just watching TV and not smell bacon in the skillet. Instead, there was a sealed box of cereal on the table, sitting next to a jug of milk, a bowl, and a spoon. I said, "What's this?" Darren answered with, "I told you I'd have breakfast ready for you when you woke up. Help yourself." I was all, okay. I had pictured more of a cooked breakfast. I sat down at the table, a little dazed from tiredness and confusion. I opened the box of cereal, and as it was pouring out into my bowl, a little box fell out with the cereal. "What the?" Darren looked over and said, "Oh wow, cereal boxes started putting prizes in them again. How cool." I opened it up, and it was a huge diamond engagement ring. By the time I looked away from the ring and back to Darren, he was already on the floor, on one knee. I instantly started bawling. This was the moment, the big moment. I had wondered how he would do it, and this was perfect. It was just him and I, no audience, and that was exactly how I wanted it. I, of course, said yes, and then he produced an amazing breakfast platter of smoked salmon and bagels and cream cheese, fresh fruit, fresh squeezed orange juice. Now, this was more the breakfast I was picturing. So I was checking all the boxes. I had the guy, the husband, and was soon to get the... We decided to opt for saving for a down payment on a house rather than a big wedding, which we both felt was the far smarter and more practical decision.
Oh, she has the
Both our
birthday?
parents were thrilled, and they told us whatever we saved for our house, they would match, since they didn't have to pay for a big, expensive wedding. We had decided to City Hall it and have a party after for friends and family.
They came out of her.
We got married and started looking for a house. We would have to add the picket fence, but we found the house right away. It was a beautiful farm-style, 2-story. It had 5 bedrooms in total, and an open floor plan that I thought would be perfect for keeping my eye on little ones running around. Once we were moved in, we started trying for our first child. We got pregnant quickly, and 9 months later, little Stephanie was born. A year after that, Justin came along. We were busy and felt like we had gone from 0 to 6, going from 1 kid to 2. It was exhausting, but it was a good exhausting. I had checked all the boxes of what I wanted from life. I had the perfect family and the perfect life.
Yeah.
Fast forward teenage years, and wow, those kids were handfuls. They were both amazing and smart, but it seemed like overnight they had become those typical confused.
Hey.
Siri. What the fuck, man?
What was it?
Stop playing with me, Siri.
Angsty teenager. Stephanie was
Siri. Siri, I'm gonna sell you. It's at least $1,300 for me.
always glued to her phone, and Justin,
It's bitch.
She says, I know you're not.
wasn't both amazing and smart.
Oh.
But it seemed like overnight they had become those typical, confused, angsty teenagers. Stephanie was always glued to her phone, and Justin wasn't much better. They both had the newest iPhones and had chosen white. I told them I thought that was a bad idea as they would get them confused. But of course,
Siri, stop it.
They ignored me. I was only their mom after all.
Sit. Siri, sit. Stop. Bullshit. Are you ready? Okay, you good? All right.
One day when I was straightening up around the house, I saw someone had left their phone on the couch. I swiped the screen to see whose it was and saw an image of a guy in teeny tiny Speedos. Interesting, I thought, assuming it was Stephanie's. I put it on the counter. When she came downstairs, I said, "You left your phone on the couch. It's on the counter." She said, "That's not mine. It's Justin's. Mine's right here." I paused. Wait a minute.
Who got these niggas
Justin
balls
had
on
a
the
sexy
phone?
guy as his screensaver?
Banana
That
without the
doesn't make
balls.
sense. I said to Stephanie, "Why would Justin have a muscle monkey in Speedos as his screensaver?" Stephanie looked like she was trying to decide how best to respond. Instead, she said, "You better talk to him about that." I decided I would do just that and marched up to his room with his phone in hand. He was still sleeping, but I turned the light on and gently roused him. He rolled over in bed groaning like the typical teenager he was. I gave him a minute to wake up and then held the phone with the photo out in front of me. "Anything you want to tell me about this?" I asked. What do you want to know?" I asked him why he didn't have a pic of some hot girl on his phone instead of a dude. He swallowed, took a deep breath, and said, "Because dudes are what I'm into, Mom." I could almost feel my perfect life swirling around me. What about grandkids? What about him having an easy life? What would Darren think about this?
Showing you what parents
I knew it would be harder for him and wasn't looking forward to telling him. I asked Justin how long he had known for, and he said he kind of always knew. I gave him a hug, told him I loved him, and that he could tell me anything. He seemed really relieved to have told me and asked me to tell his dad for him, which I was planning to do anyway. That night when Darren got home from work, I made sure the kids were out and I had a nice dinner on the table for him. He knew something was up the minute he saw the table set, as he was always the one who cooked. I sat him down and told him to brace himself,
Who's
and then
dead?
I
Who
had some
died?
news that might be hard for him to hear. I just came out with it, no beating around the bush.
It sounds
His
like
mouth hung
Peter.
open. He was quiet for a long time. He asked me how I found out, and I recounted the morning events for him. He said he didn't really know how to react. That of course he would support Justin, but it made him feel like he didn't know him as well as he thought. Or maybe that Justin didn't feel close enough to tell him.
Now those are good parents.
I reminded him that I hadn't been told and had found out accidentally. That night when the kids came home, Darren talked to Justin about it and told him that he didn't care who he was into, as long as he was safe, happy, and healthy. A few days later, I was cleaning up again and saw a phone lying on the couch again.
Uh-oh,
I swiped
titties.
again, and this time saw a pic of a sexy model in a bikini, a female model, of
Oh,
course.
not again.
I put it on the counter before thinking, wait a minute, if that's not Justin's phone,
I'd be like,
which I now
"Fuck."
knew it wasn't, did this mean... Oh God, not again.
Did the word.
Stephanie, can you come downstairs, please? I
Yeah.
called up the stairs. She came bounding down the stairs as happy as could be. I asked her if she had anything she needed to tell me, and she knew right away what it was. "How did you know?" she asked. I showed her the phone pic, the same as I knew with Justin.
Damn phone now.
She told me that she was planning on telling me, but wanted the news about Justin to fully sink in first. I told her I appreciated the concern, but that I would rather know the truth of things on the sooner side rather than later.
Oops.
Anyway, we had a long talk, and things were good. I made dinner again that night and had it ready for when Darren got home. Uh-oh, he said when he saw it. "Who's gay now?" He was laughing when he said it, totally joking. But I said, "Your daughter." His fork clanged onto his plate and he looked up to the roof. "Wow, seriously?" "Serious as a heart attack," I said. So within a week, I found out my son's gay and my daughter's a lesbian. I thought back to that perfect life I had always wanted and how on the outside...
I got a question. She said, I found out that my son's gay and my daughter's a lesbian. Aren't they both gay?
That's what I'm about to say.
Aren't they both gay? It's just the type of gay.
I guess. Yeah.
But
He
gay.
would be a homosexual,
Yes, and she would be a
and
lesbian.
she would be a
It's
lesbian.
just when people think gay, they think guys.
Yeah.
Guilty.
satisfied.
Because that's
It
why.
looked exactly as I had pictured. I didn't love my kids any less, but I felt like I had to mourn the loss of that idea. I knew this day and age was different and so much more tolerable, but I still worried about things being harder for them. I wondered how the whole grandchildren thing would work, but told myself that that was a long way down the road and nothing to worry about now. Darren and I loved our kids, and we loved our life. It had turned out a little differently than we pictured,
That was not.
but it was authentic and ours.
That's not.
Yeah, but what the fuck?
To watch more
Now you gonna tell me the dog is
videos like
what the
this,
fuck?
hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments section what
You
you
know
thought
those
about this
plans?
It's
story.
possible.
You know those plants we bought yesterday? They're lesbians. What?
It's possible now. You know, that's possible.
And the grapes and the bananas we got for the grocery store, they're children. What? Just too much, bitch. Too much info. Matter of fact, don't look at nobody else's phone for the rest of your life. And tomorrow when I come home, put something in the microwave. Don't cook me shit. Don't cook a goddamn thing. Cause as soon as you start cooking, bitch, you won't tell me shit. You know, this morning we found out your grandfather did. Fuck!
Come on.
Siri, don't play those kind of games, Siri. Come on, Serena. Siri, what are you doing that, Siri? Hey, stop it. I'm gonna send you to your room, Siri. When you tell to go to DT's. Tuberculosis. Come on. We'll wait.
My two moms want me to be like that.
Lesbian. You know, my parents want me to be a lesbian. You know how some people have a hard time telling their parents they are gay? I've heard so many coming out stories, and some are really heartbreaking. I have the complete opposite problem with my moms. I'm straight, but they can't seem to accept it. You see, I never had a dad. I grew up with two moms, and they always wanted to have a kid. So after deciding who would be the one to get pregnant, they visited a fertility clinic. My moms are amazing, but I'll admit that when I was a kid, sometimes I had a hard time understanding why my family was so different. All my friends had a mom and a dad. Sure, some of them were divorced and didn't live together, but I didn't even have a father figure. We lived in a small town, and folks around there were really religious. I'm sure nowadays it's not so uncommon to have two moms, but back when I was growing up, people weren't so understanding. During middle school, most students would make fun of me. They'd make nasty jokes about my moms and refuse to hang out with me. I wasn't invited to slumber parties often. Even their parents would give me judgmental looks. They would gossip and whisper when one of my moms picked me up after school. The problems didn't end there. When I was at home, I'd also get into arguments with my parents. They were convinced I had to grow up to be just like them. I looked up to my moms, so that seemed great, but then I understood they didn't just mean their career or strong personalities. They wanted to convince me I was a lesbian. I think everyone should be able to be accepted for who they are, but my moms didn't want to hear me say I liked boys. They kept telling me I had to be into girls, that I was just confused and going through a phase. It was so frustrating, and I didn't know how to deal with it. They were so loving and supportive in every other aspect of my life. But when it came to having crushes on boys, they wouldn't have it. No boys were allowed at my home while I was growing up. If I ever became friends with a boy my age, I had to play with him at the park or hang out at the mall. He couldn't visit my house. I entered high school, and that was when the situation really reached a boiling point. My moms would begin setting me up with their friends' daughters. They would ask me if I thought this or that girl was cute, and I would tell them over and over again that I just didn't like women. We'd get in massive arguments, and I ended up rushing upstairs in tears, locking myself in my room. They would apologize and let go of the issue for a few weeks, but soon they would invite
Mom,
another
so what
friend
did you
over.
eat
To
today,
no
pussy?
one's surprise,
Do
it
you
was
want
just
it?
another thinly veiled attempt to match me up with some random
No, I
girl.
like pee.
I
Not
got
today,
so
you know.
tired of it and eventually stopped arguing with them altogether. I just went on those silly dates they set up for me. I would go to the movies or grab some lunch and had a great time, but no romance ever sparked. I made a few good friends that way, and luckily every woman understood it just wasn't into them.
Yes.
It was annoying, but at least I got to meet new people and I stopped bickering with my
Why you
parents.
walking like a vegan?
When I moved
Yeah,
away
we
for
met that.
college, I was relieved to put
Going
some
in, see all
space
of those
between my
areas.
moms and myself.
You walk
We
with
talk on the
your
phone
periods.
every few days,
Yeah.
and avoiding the questions about my love life became easier, at first at least.
Bloody
Because
Sunday.
during my second year living on
Yes.
campus, I met Lucas. He asked me out and I said
Lucas.
yes, though I kept it a secret from my
Say
family at first.
sacrificial waterfall.
Date after date, I began realizing he was the right guy for
Sacrificial
me.
waterfall?
And after a year of being together, we
Damn.
decided to get engaged. That was when I knew
You
I
want that?
couldn't hide it from my moms any longer. We told them about it during Thanksgiving dinner, as I didn't want to break the news to them over the phone. We argued for hours while the turkey grew
What
cold. Lucas stood by my
What
side all through this ordeal,
What
and it only brought us closer together, which made my mom so angry. We are married now, and my parents simply don't approve of him. I still love them so much, but it was hard visiting them with Lucas, as they always ended up getting into nasty fights. After a particularly heated argument, I put my foot down and explained I couldn't keep this up any longer. We came to an agreement to try and avoid the subject altogether. Things are slowly getting better, even if it's not the ideal solution. My moms and I will never see eye to eye about me being straight. Though this still annoys me, I've come to terms with the fact that I can't change them, just like they can't change me. To avoid losing them, I had to
Lift it up
accept
to the
their
ground one
shortcomings. I couldn't live without my moms in my life, no matter how stubborn they may be. I wonder what'll happen when I let them know I'm pregnant, though. Perhaps it will make it easier for them, as they've always wanted a grandchild. If you enjoyed my crazy story, don't forget to leave a like and check out the other stories on this channel. And subscribe if you are new.
Next. Go check and see if we get a message. Message. Nope. Don't do that. Read that. Tell your parent I said go to somebody else's house.
No.
We don't want you here. Tell them that.
No,
Your period.
I haven't got it yet.
But tell it don't visit.
That's why I'm having worse hot flashes.
Take your location off your phone. It won't find you.
Don't have hot flashes now, honey, because later you got 10 years of them.
Yeah. I had PCOS. If I don't know what that is.
We do, but we don't want it.
I've had hot flashes. I've got my period since I was 8.
Damn, life is rough for you.
My first hot flash, I thought I was like having a seizure. I was like 8. It's like this.
When right to work at that house, the one that
Now hit play. Damn. Niggas.
When I was younger, I realized there was something different
Pay
about
attention.
me. I didn't really like
So
playing
1 minute, 52
with Barbie
seconds.
dolls or
Yes.
wearing dresses. I preferred hanging around the boys and playing with action figures and cars and playing in the mud.
Hold on, get
And
your gun back
even
here.
playing with the insects sometimes and frogs. Not that many people liked me. I got picked on. It made me very sad. When I started to hit puberty, that's when it got hard. I felt fat and ugly, and I got bullied for being the tomboy. But I knew there was something more to me, something that was missing. I didn't know who I was. But then I got a phone one day and discovered the term transgender. And I looked it up, and it made so much more sense to me. I realized that I was transgender. I didn't tell anyone until grade 8. I was too scared to come out because I thought people wouldn't like me. But surprisingly, no one really hated me for it. I had so many friends who cared and tried their best to understand, but sadly some people didn't. But that's okay. It's hard to understand. Now I'm very happy with who I am.
Next.
All right.
That was beautiful.
Remember the little girl on the what's name? She wanted to be a black.
Oh yeah, I want to be a black policewoman, something policewoman.
Yeah. You can't but why? I want to be a black police woman.
Okay, next on the docket.
I'm in love with my brother. What the fuck?
Let's find out. Hey sis, say it. Flip.
I don't got it in me.
This is an ad for a new diaper brand.
We were walking through our local park hand in hand, and I'll never forget the way people looked at us, as if we were a disgust to them. But I didn't care because I knew in my heart I'd never be this happy again. Have you ever just known something, known deep inside you that something was right for you? Call it a gut reaction or whatever, but I knew from a young age that I was in love with someone I probably shouldn't have been in love with. I was 15 when I realized. I'm Mal, by the way. And honestly, that moment when I realized how I felt was just crazy. At the time, I lived with my mom and my older brother, Jack. Our dad had died when we were just little kids, so for as long as I can remember, it had just been the three of us. We were the three musketeers. Me and my brother had always gotten along well. I never understood how siblings could fight with each other. Me and my brother never even had play fights. We were just so sweet to each other all the time. And one time when I was being bullied by two boys in my class at school, my brother appeared and shouted at them. And I thought he was a hero, like my knight in shining armor. So you could say that we had a pretty special bond. Everyone always said we were the sweetest brothers, and our mom was so lucky to have sons like us. We spent all of our time together, and around the age of 15, something inside me clicked. One day at school, I overheard the girls in front of me talking about their crushes. Oh, Sophie, it's simple. If someone gives you butterflies in your stomach and makes your heart beat faster when you see them, it means you have a crush on them. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what that girl had said. I knew those feelings all too well. There was someone who gave me butterflies in my stomach every single day. And then I realized who that person was. My brother.
Oh.
I don't know when it first started, but pretty soon he was all I could think about. I was so attracted to him, and I didn't even know I was gay. I just knew I was in love with my brother. Everyone loves their siblings, right? Yeah, but for me, it was different. I didn't just love my brother. I was in love with him. I wanted to spend every waking second with him, and more than anything, I wanted him to feel the same way. I started feeling nervous around him, and he kept asking me what was wrong, but I couldn't tell him. I knew it wasn't right to feel this way. We were walking home from school one day, and we took a shortcut through the park. Up ahead, I saw two men holding hands, and that's when I realized I couldn't take it any longer. I asked my brother if we could sit down for a moment. Jack, there's something I need to tell you, I said, shaking.
I would have been like,
he looked worried, and later he told me how he thought I was going to tell him I was sick or something. We sat next to the big tree that we always used to play under when we were kids, and then I told him,
that it?
Jack,
I thought you was gonna say AIDS.
I like you. You see those men over there? I want to hold your hand like that too. Please don't hate me. I know this is weird, but I just can't keep this from you any longer. We shouldn't have secrets. To my complete shock, he didn't even look surprised. In fact, he looked at me and smiled. I couldn't believe it. My heart was thumping in my chest, and it felt like the butterflies in my stomach were dancing. But then, there was silence. I could feel my hands starting to sweat.
He was going to tell me this was completely inappropriate and that I didn't even get to finish my thought because the next thing I knew, Jack was turning to me and telling me he had feelings for me too. That evening, I couldn't stop smiling. I knew in the back of my mind that if anyone found out about this, they'd be really horrified. No one dates their siblings. But you know what? I didn't really care what other people thought of us. We were happy, and that was all that mattered. The hardest part was telling our mom. At first, she was completely shocked and thought we were joking, but pretty soon, she started to accept it. And now she says she always knew we had a special relationship. Jack and I are officially a couple now. And yes, loads of people have told us that we're going to burn in hell, but we just ignore them. We even have two kids that we adopted. Jack is 26 now, and I'm 24. And I feel like our life is just incredible. He takes care of us all, and he is seriously the most generous, caring man. He even volunteers at the local homeless shelter. People always try to set him up with girls, but he only has eyes for me. Obviously, we can't get legally married because we're brothers, but the main thing is that we're together and happy. I truly believe you can't decide where you'll find your one true love. Sometimes they might be standing right in front of you, like my brother was. Have you ever been in love?
Damn well that
It's the
story's
best,
supposed to
right?
go different.
Please share your comments below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories.
Well,
The fuck?
so was the one with the daddy gonna get the gun?
Well, see,
Cause he was gay.
that's rough. Just like
After
Pete,
he hit him with his right hand,
not his left.
not his left, his right hand. Then he going to the garage to get the gun while mom beat my ass.
Next. Next.
I'm not only Muslim, I'm a gay Muslim. But that's kind of...
Whether you're spicing things up.
I was in my room studying when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I heard the sound of two women behind.
Fuck you,
Siri? Hey, bitch. Stop
me.
it.
Like, don't talk
When
to
I
me
looked
that
back,
way.
I noticed my father standing there with my mobile phone in his
Hey. Who you think you fucking with, Siri?
shaky hands, staring at me. I could see how mad he was when he started walking angrily towards me. Run,
Oh, look
or
at
you
the
will get
angry
raped,
eyes. Oh,
I thought
shit.
to myself. But let's back up a little first. As a Muslim girl from a Turkish family raised in Germany, I was educated very
Wait, what?
religiously and always believed in
I heard the
Allah.
Muslim girl from
I
Turkey.
prayed 5
Turkey
times a
man
day,
in Turkey.
fasted during
What?
Ramadan, and dressed like a child to not attract the boys' attention. It was always very exhausting, but I knew I had to do it to make both Allah and my parents happy. When I turned 14, my dad ordered me to start wearing a hijab. I always knew that day would come, but I never expected it to happen so fast.
Nothing but that.
Wearing it wasn't an option because in Islam, the woman is very submissive to the man and she needs to do everything that he asks of her. As a small child, I would always see my mother when she didn't obey him. He even told her that he was holding back compared to his friend in Saudi Arabia, who would have done much worse things to his wife. So if I refused to wear the hijab, you can imagine what would happen to me. Throughout my life, I was repeatedly told that I was born to marry a wealthy Muslim, and as his wife, I would have to serve him and take good care of him.
Damn.
I always agreed with it, and honestly, I was looking forward to it. But during puberty, I realized that there was something wrong with me. When I looked at girls, I always imagined myself kissing their soft lips and getting close to them. I always thought it was a normal feeling because I was so lonely. My parents would not let me get close to any non-Muslim girls. So it felt logical to me as I only had a few friends. I'm only desiring more friendships, I kept telling myself. But as more time passed, the more uncertainties emerged. One day, I saw a girl on the internet who shared her story on coming out as a lesbian, and I realized I felt exactly the same way. This was when the most difficult phase of my life began. I knew that what I felt was wrong, and that Allah would burn me in purgatory for being this way. In Islamic states, they are even beheaded.
And if it wasn't Allah who would punish me, my dad certainly would. But I was just so hungry for a lesbian relationship that I simply couldn't ignore it. Why am I this way? I'm not only a woman, and it's twice. I knew I shouldn't be thinking something like that, but I did. Since then, it only got worse. I was losing more and more faith in Allah and was constantly afraid of my parents. My dad quickly realized that something was wrong with me, and he began to spy on me. That meant I had to be even more careful. But I knew that in the long run, it couldn't go on like this. One evening, my dad entered my room without me noticing. He was watching a video on my mobile phone where two women were kissing each other. He roared loudly with anger. He looked so mad, I knew I had to get out of there. So I ran out the door as quickly as I could. My dad threw me a shoe and started chasing me. In the background, I heard my mother crying loudly. I think she knew everything was going to change from that point. I ran away from my home. I had left everything behind me as I was running to save my life. After leaving my house, I kept running straight ahead and I never looked back. It was already dark and I needed to find a place where I would be safe. So I decided to go at a friend's house, which my parents didn't know because she was a non-Muslim. When I arrived, she was surprised and amazed me for the first time without my hijab on. I briefly told her the story. She understood and let me stay over for the night. The next day, I made my way to the youth welfare office and told them everything. They then organized an appointment for me in a residential group where I ended up staying.
The hell on your legs and giving her
Now
the
I'm finally fine, safe and honest with myself. My parents were deprived of custody and any contacts with me are forbidden. I was told that my father still wants to get rid of me, permanently. But actually, that's his problem. I feel so good in this new life, my new environment, and it's so nice to be myself. I know there are many girls in the world who are feeling the same way I used to feel. I want them to know that they should always be honest to themselves and not let their religion or anything limit them in life. You should all be free to be who you are.
And she was getting too Americanized, so they killed her. What's Americanized?
Oh, isn't that Greta Summer to Ed?
She was dressing and she wanted to do things American kids did.
Next.
But they were from the country where they control
India.
India. It was they were oh yeah. So they killed her.
And they stabbed her and the mom held her down.
Yeah, the mom held her down while the dad killed her.
But that's okay.
It's
No, that wasn't okay. They got arrested.
Mm-hmm. And
No, I know, but like.
But she's still dead.
No, I'm saying, but that's how to get down. That's not cool.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's okay, I guess, over there. But they don't have to worry about it over there.
Yeah, because they're not Americans.
Mm-mm.
Next.
But they can't come here and then be expecting them not to change.
Next.
My LGBT journey, Pride Month.
Next.
Happy Pride Month! Woo! Time to celebrate that we're not straight. Like we don't do that already, but anyway. And like, no offense to straight people, seriously, like thank you for those who actually support us. And I love you guys. It's just that, you know, like June is always the time to like raise up our flags and be like, what? Anyway, back on track. When I really think about it, I don't really do much for Pride Month because, like, I'm not straight 24/7. So it's like I
782nd day of being
I've been celebrating all my gay life. But anyway, that's not what Pride Month is all about. In an historical sense, Pride Month exists so we can acknowledge the Stonewall riots on June 1969. 69! I'm 21 years old. I have to grow up. The event was the catalyst for the LGBT community to rise to action, fighting back against police and protesting so that we will be recognized
Did you know that?
and respected by law and society.
Since then, the movement
What?
continues to grow more and more, and people are able to learn, love, and accept themselves and each other
Then don't you
worldwide.
know nothing.
Knowing where we started is important for the present and future. And speaking of,
Okay, once you learn
I
a
thought
little
to
bit about
celebrate this
yourself, you're
wonderful month by recalling my history. Being a Filipina firstborn into a religious family upbringing, it's pretty much guaranteed that LGBT lessons or mentions were off the table. Unless it was about spewing how being anything other than straight is bad. As long as I could consciously understand commands, lessons, and respecting authority, I took their views and opinions on the matter and made it a part of mine. I was constantly told by my mother to not be a lesbian. And I mean, to this day, she still got what she wanted. So, no hard feelings, I guess. Anyway, she said it with such distaste that my mind had lesbian equals bad, gay equals bad immediately. As a child that didn't want to upset my parents, I thought, all right, just date and marry a creeping thoughts started to develop in the back of my mind. Every time I walked through my school halls, I usually found myself looking at girls for longer than I should, as a straight person. At the same time, I entertained the thoughts of having relationships with those girls. Of course, I always dismissed them, but it never truly went away. It didn't bother me too much at first, but over time, it started to make its way into my core thoughts, and never left. I didn't think I was a lesbian because I still got attracted to guys, and the vice versa. I didn't think I was straight because I started to accept that I was attracted to girls, despite my only knowledge of anything gay or lesbian, and the like. I was so confused and frustrated, which made me anxious and sad. I felt like I was on the wrong path, like there was something wrong with me. That is, until I had planning class in grade 10. And for context, planning was a class for life lessons like budgeting, career choices, self-exploration, etc., etc. Okay, side tangent, I love that class for the big reason I'm about to tell, but I really want to shine a spotlight on something. The teacher had a thing called the question box. Anyone in the class can anonymously write a question on a piece of paper, fold it, put it in a box, and every class before we start lessons, the teacher would answer them. It was a great way for people to get answers they needed about anything, and or get another person's views and opinions on specific matters without feeling embarrassed. That was such an underrated system, and I wish I still had something like that in my life. Anyway, back on track. One day, the teacher focused on self-exploration/reflection and taught about the LGBT community. She told us what each letter stood for and information about them. I knew what L and G stood for, and I learned something new from T, but then I heard what B stood for, and suddenly everything but what I just learned faded away like white noise. I felt like I became a new person, and I realized why. I found what described what I was feeling. Liking guys, liking girls.
These motherfuckers.
Bisexual. All the worry about whether I was straight or gay immediately washed away. I was elated, ecstatic, and felt like I got a huge weight off my shoulders. The years since then were filled with a confidence I'd never felt before. I was so confident, in fact, that I came out to my entire school friend group at the same time. Needless to say, I was proven right that I chose the right people to hang with. While I was at it, I came out to my closest family, which was maybe like a handful of people. I may have felt a surge of confidence, but I was still afraid of what my parents, my brother, and others would think of me. Like most people in the LGBT community, I was still mostly in the closet. Homophobic family and people made it very easy to stay inside. And of course, religion was a big factor, which really, it shouldn't be. I'm not gonna get into it too much, but God said that he loves everyone, meaning that he doesn't draw a line in the sand, right? Yet gay or anything of the like people are exempt? Seems hypocritical. Anyway, the belief was, of course, embedded into my parents and brother. Like I said, religion was a big factor, but as individuals, they found LGBT unnatural and couldn't understand or accept those in the community. What was worse is that they seemed like they didn't want to learn or listen to understand. As you can imagine, or know by experience, it made it really easy to just be myself around those who are willing to have an open mind. And just as easy to avoid certain topics and mannerisms around those who might think the worst of me. From the middle of high school to the end of college, I embraced my bisexuality and loved every bit of it. During those years, I also learned more about the community. Turns out, as I was growing, the community was doing the same. More than 2 genders and partners, new sexualities, and the one that made the most impact on me at the time, the difference between romantic and sexual identity. I learned that while someone may be sexual, meaning that they're not interested in a sexual relationship, they would like to be in a romantic relationship. With time, I reflected on what I learned and see if I could refine my identity. I could have stayed strictly bisexual, but I didn't want to feel like I did the last time. No more confusion. I have learned and I will apply my new knowledge. I realized that I was still bisexual, but not biromantic. Being with a non-binary, bigender, or transgender person in a romantic relationship felt like it was natural to me, like I felt this way all along. And so, I identified as bisexual panromantic. But, of course, that wasn't the last time I reflected and learned. A year and a half ago, I got together with my current boyfriend. I could gush about him for a long time, but I'll save it for another story. Maybe. Anyway, he's trans. Though long distance, we take turns going to visit the other for a time. We've gotten to know each other more, gone on dates, and enjoyed each other's company. Since we got together, I once again reflected on my romantic and sexual identity. Throughout my years being in the community, I have gotten more open-minded. I realized that I loved anyone. Like, it wasn't a huge deal how they identified themselves. I respected them and saw them as a person. I also realized that I thought that all along, and that me saying I was panromantic was just a safe bet than changing my sexuality. It didn't seem so clear then, but eventually it did, and I'm glad it did, because I felt so sorry being honest about myself, but knowing who I really am drowned the negative thoughts. I'm pansexual! Once again, I felt a huge surge of confidence, but for every high, there is a low. Trouble and negative thoughts engulfed me one day while I was praying with my family, and it was so bad that I cried a lot. My mom noticed and asked me what was wrong and that I could tell her anything. Me still being defensive of what was really going on with me, I came out as the safer bet. I really didn't want to in that moment, but I couldn't get into everything that was draining me. It was just too much at the time. My mom didn't speak for a moment, but just hugged me and said that she didn't quite understand, but it was okay. So while I was still afraid, I had my mom come out for me to my dad, which, thinking about it now was like one of the most terrible decisions I've ever made in my life. That should have been, something that came from me. He didn't speak ill about it. In fact, he spoke nothing about it. My dad's never been into emotions and stuff like that, so it was not a big deal. My brother was the hardest person to handle. Everything I was, he was the opposite. Like, he's the type of guy I'd rather avoid and just cut ties with. As expected, he spoke ill of it for days, weeks, months. Eventually, after one day I picked him up from practice, he said that he accepted me because in the end, we were siblings. With the responses I got from the 3 people I was most afraid of coming out to, I should have been relieved and happy. But to this day, I don't completely feel that way. My mom is slowly getting better, admittingly. But the guys in my family, thinking about it made me realize that my dad just acknowledged it and acted like it didn't happen. I mean, he accepted me for sure, but I wasn't affirmed from him. And when I talked about sexuality and my identity, he doesn't really carry conversation with me. As for my brother, I realized he didn't accept me for what I identified as. He accepted me as an obligation to his older sister. I wanted him to understand, accept, and support. I didn't want it to feel like he needed to fulfill some life contract he signed just from being born after me. Both instances didn't feel genuine, and for that I still feel hurt from time to time. But despite this, my nature and upbringing kicked in and told me to count my blessings. I knew other people in the community had or has it worse than me. In the end, I still love and have confidence in myself. Though this is where my LGBTQIA+ journey is right now, I am still learning and changing. This is what makes everything I experienced and will experience so amazing. Never before have I met so many kind, supportive, and lively people, felt so liberated, and most of all, been so confident in myself. Self-esteem is hard to come by. It's really, really easy to doubt yourself and just hide behind a mask. So that's everything to me. I have my Planning 10 teacher to thank for being such a pivotal influence in my life. And I want to thank you for being a part of my ever-going story. I hope that my story resonated with you, or even given you a push in your own story, whether you're a part of the LGBT community or an ally. I believe that everything happens for a reason, no matter how good or bad it affected you. If you have no one to lift you up with a small pep talk, or if it's been a while since your last one, let this be a reminder. Always be proud and confident in yourself, and never stop supporting each other, learning, and in turn, understanding. In the words of Confucius,
What do you think of that story, sir?
we must first put the nation in order. To put the nation in order, we must first put the family in order. To put the family in order, we must first cultivate our personal life. We must first set our hearts right. That has been the quote that affected me the most since social justice in grade 12. And I hope that sticks for you, because it's such an important quote to me. And hopefully it's the same for you. Thank you so much for listening and watching.
Next.
And of course...
Oh, this was the last one. My older brother revealed a terrible secret.
Hi there. My name's Boris, and I'm gonna tell you how my brother revealed a dark secret that turned my life upside down. I have a decent family that's just like thousands of other families. I love the way we live and our daily routines. My parents are amazing people, and they're precious to me. We do everything together. I also have a brother who's 16 years older than me. As a grown man, he's already moved out. For as long as I can remember, he's been disrespectful and sometimes outright rude to our parents. Some evenings he drops by to check up on us. That's what he says anyways. I think he goes to college or has a job. I'm not sure. I think not even our parents know for sure what he does. My brother was born when mom and dad were very young. First, they were studying to get a higher education. Then they both got jobs and were striving to advance their careers until they reached senior positions that demanded a lot of their time. But I can tell you that I didn't feel any lack of attention. I could usually play chess with dad or have a heart-to-heart chat with him. Sometimes we'd go on a fishing trip to the river. Once, I caught a fish that was so enormous, everyone was praising me in astonishment. I felt so happy to be loved and appreciated, but my older brother just smirked and turned his back on me. I asked mom why he was treating me like that, but she said he was just jealous that he didn't get as much attention anymore. I didn't quite believe mom, so I try to keep it low in his presence now. One night, I woke up to loud yelling. I listened to hear my parents fighting with my brother. He was demanding money again, even though they'd recently given him a fair amount. Father was calling him ungrateful and selfish. He sounded solemn. I'd never heard Dad talk like that before. My brother flew into a rage. It was me he was yelling about now. Apparently, I was a stray they had adopted into the family to shower me with attention that he'd never known. He was screaming violently, and I could feel the pain and anger in his voice. I was listening with bated breath. Like, I literally was so shocked I couldn't breathe. It just hurt so much to learn I was completely alone in the world. I mean, wasn't I? Apparently, my parents were actually strangers to me. I could hardly believe it, and all I wanted to do was scream. Then I got dressed, went outside, and quietly closed the door behind me. I kept running through the night city until I stopped on a motorway bridge to look down at the river. The height made my head spin, and I ran to the park across the bridge. I found a secluded spot and wept myself out. My heart was beating so fast, and I could feel a burning ache below my shoulder blade, but the tears kept flowing. I was scared to even think about tomorrow. How was I going to live with this knowledge? I couldn't take my mind off my biological parents. Where is my mom now? Who is she? Who's the man that contributed to my birth? Why did they abandon me? Are they even alive? I kept roaming the park until dawn, unable to feel hunger or thirst. It was only then that I thought about my adoptive parents. It had completely slipped my mind that they must have been terribly worried about me. I rushed home. I didn't dare to ring the doorbell for a long time. When Mom opened the door, she was in tears. She held me tight and patted my head and said I had always been a loved and wanted child. I hugged her back and burst into tears again. Dad came out looking upset. He took my hand and told me to go wash my face. After dinner, they finally told me the truth they had kept from me for years. My older brother was a spoiled child. He was an early bloomer who didn't listen to his parents because they were too busy with work to raise him properly. He spent his days alone and dealt with any trouble he had at school himself. Soon enough, he didn't pay much attention to his parents at all. In order to counter his selfishness, they decided to have another child. After they couldn't do it on their own, they adopted a baby, and that was me. In fact, I'd never felt that they treated us any differently. They loved my brother just as much as they loved me. It was his own temper and his own high expectations that caused his jealousy. We talked for hours that morning. Mom and Dad even skipped work. Brother came back in the evening and sat down with us. All of us were silent for a while. When my brother spoke at last, he said he'd given it a lot of thought and realized we were the most important people in his life after all. Dad shook his hand tearfully and thanked him for admitting his own mistakes like a real man. I felt at peace with myself again. My goal now is to meet my biological parents. Do you guys want more episodes? Then press the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell.
You got to do hand it at us. Alright, people, that was today's show. This is what, episode 9?
I know you know I don't know.
10.
9 was yesterday.
Up 9.
Today, episode 10. Yay! And tomorrow is episode 11. So be there or be square. And how did you like today's episode? It was interesting.
Yeah.
Some of those stories was accurate that we watched, right?
Yeah.
Some of them were a little far-fetched.
And a little too much. Like the brother falling in love with his brother and the mom being okay with it. 'Cause my mom would have killed both of us.
So, but it does happen. Very seldom, but it does happen. Her cousin.
Yeah, like if it was like her stepbrother or something, like they do in the pornos, alright. Blood. Not even half. Blood. Full. 100%.
Well, I can't speak on that because I don't have brothers. So, oh well. Now, yeah. So, it's shut.
Friday, Monday, correct?
Hey sis, let me get a flip. Bye.